Learned helplessness. The concept of, I've tried hard enough, so I'll stop trying. But how exactly does this relate to the amazing digital circus? Gather round and let's find out. Let me start this off by better explaining what learned helplessness is. Learned helplessness is a psychological concept describing a behavior that is exhibited after learning you are not in control of a given situation. I won't get into the neuroscience of this, just know that if you get used to not being in control, your brain usually won't let you even consider retaking it. The most popular and probably also best example for people unfamiliar with this concept is the flea jar experiment. You lock some fleas in a jar with the lid on and then wait. After a while, the fleas will stop hitting their heads on the lid to try and escape, since it is impossible. If you then remove the lid, the fleas will still not jump out of the jar, instead only jumping as high as the lid previously allowed. Now that we have established what learned helplessness is, let's get to the most obvious example of it in the amazing digital circus. Gangle. Gangle, especially in the earlier episodes, is constantly being bullied and even blackmailed by Jax. When we first meet her, she's already acclimated to this. It's nothing new, so she just accepts Jack's treatment of her, hoping that he'll go easy on her in return. The first time we see her actually confront this is in episode 6, They All Get Guns, in her conversation with Zubul. Gangle asks Zubul whether or not she thinks Jax is gonna be mad that she didn't get on a team with him, to which Zubul says she shouldn't have to worry about it if he's not even there at this time. Gangle has a hard time considering the possibility of not bowing down to his wants, since that's all she's known for at least some time before we meet her. She says it feels like she's only his toy. It's clear that at this point she doesn't believe she can do anything to stop him and his treatment of her. So she doesn't want to try. It's only until Zubul tells her that she can, that she truly does. Gangle is an example of how power dynamics in relationships of any kind can affect our perception of our abilities and the limitations of the world and people around us. How being abused can not only make you feel powerless, but accept being powerless. Zubul is the other side of this coin. In episode 3, we first learn about their body dysphoria, how they hate their body and the ability to switch out parts. She confronts Kane about this, who simply doesn't get it. He's an AI, so he understands the what, but not the why, so he's indifferent. Throughout the episodes, however, Zubul still tries on new parts constantly, trying to find something that feels right to them, which never happens. Is what I would be saying if we didn't have the heartfelt conversations this show is known for. In They All Get Guns, in the same talk with Gangle, Zubul explains to Gangle how loving and accepting yourself is a choice, not something that just is, to which Gangle basically replies with, "No you." And this is where we see what I would call positive learned helplessness. Instead of trying to regain control over something you can't control, in this case Zubul's body, they find control within the boundaries that they are given, which Zubul does by shortly after using her parts to absolutely clip on Jax and Pomni. We also get clear confirmation of them accepting their helplessness in Beach episode, where they admit to Jax that being able to change their body isn't all that bad. But what is pretty bad is Jax, our final example of learned helplessness for today, and easily the most distressing of them all. Jax, throughout the early episodes, escapes his lack of control by exercising power over the other characters, be it NPCs or the players. He insults them and hurts them both physically and psychologically. This is the darkest outcome of learned helplessness: violence. If he has no agency over how his days are spent, or who they are spent with, he resorts to the one thing he knows he can control: pain. If he can hurt other people, maybe he does still have control over something in this meaningless world that is the circus. Jax, as of episode 8, doesn't really come to terms with his helplessness, essentially spending his time in complete and utter denial of not being in control. Jax is a cautionary tale of what can happen if you refuse to accept reality, of what can happen if you refuse to recognize your lack of control over certain things. There's a point to be made that Jax also does some of these things out of a place of misogyny, which, as I've said in my previous video, is a true incel classic. But I don't think this is true, since it just so happens the only other man in the circus is Kinger, which he can't really bully much when he's insane. But I digress. This show is about finding meaning in a stagnant life, finding control where there is none, and how different kinds of people react to this kind of environment. In the end, this show is about sex!
What are you talking about?
Thank you all for watching, and see you the next time I rant about something to my screen like an insane person.